Humans of the cardboard, welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today I am talking about a very, very interesting card, further in depth than just my initial reaction that we saw a couple days ago. This card is Little Opposition. It's a new normal trap card set to come out in Cyberstorm Access, actually Duelist Nexus, the set after Cyberstorm Access. It is insanely cool. It's a really interesting card, and we're going to go through it today. So before we need to get to the best options for this card, because there's really not a million options for this card. I think I have somewhere between 15 and 20 that are the most interesting to me we'll go through. Obviously, if I miss anything, let me know in the comment section down below, as well as your general thoughts on this card. But let's start by reading this card, getting an understanding for what this card is doing straight up before we even get to the rest. So, Little Opposition. This card reads: choose 2 unused main monster zones in the same columns. That means one from you, one from your opponent. It just needs to be any column that does not have a monster in either slot, yours or your opponent's side of the field. Apply this effect, then your opponent can apply it for themselves. That's the other downside to this card, is you're going to do this, but then your opponent can do this. So depending on the matchups, your opponent could take advantage of this card as well. This card reads: special summon 1 level 2 or lower monster from your hand or deck to your chosen zone in attack position or face down defense position. You can only activate 1 Little Opposition per turn. Now this is particularly interesting. I think they really balance this card by allowing your opponent to also apply this effect once you do, and that way if this card ever becomes a little bit too prevalent, people could start teching in, one-offs that just punish this card immensely, right? And so that's definitely something to keep in mind. But I do think on a rogue level, we could see this card in a handful of decks, as well as maybe decks that want to try and play certain cards. It's going to be a really cool card that could come out of nowhere and really surprise in events. I just don't think it's ever going to be a staple in a metagame, because once it does, everybody's going to plan for it, and they can decimate this card from that point forward. So keep that in mind. So let's get to the options here. I think the most important thing to keep in mind, this is level 2 or lowers. So the most important thing here, doesn't negate, doesn't do anything. So we're looking at potential floodgatey monsters to just summon and immediately on your opponent's turn drop one of these cards and then immediately just kind of lock them out of a portion of the game. Or an interruptive card that, like, on summon is doing something, has a quick effect on the opponent's turn, or a really good engine card that actually does function well on the opponent's turn that also ends up being level 2 or lower. Those are the biggest targets. Let's start with generic cards, floodgates here. First is Consecrated Light. This card says neither player can normal or special dark monsters or declare attacks with a dark monster, and this card can't be destroyed with destroyed by battle with a dark monster. Also, you take no battle damage from that battle. So this card pretty much is just, hey, you're playing a dark deck, fuck you. There we go. Like, if this card existed during tier limit format, you could literally summon this. Tier would be like, oh, I could summon Merly. And you're like, no, you can't, because I get to resolve first. I get Consecrated Light, and now you can't summon Merly. So it's going to be very, very tailored to a specific matchup, potentially, but still an interesting card to keep in mind. From there, we move to Testudo Arat Newman. This is the most generically applicable one. Neither player can special summon monsters with 1800 or more attack, period. Now, it is important to keep in mind this card does have to summon in attack position, so you just need to be weary of that you should have some sort of backup quick removal or protection just in case, because you're summoning a level 2 or lower, so they're going to be small. If it's a floodgate, you do need to make sure that you have an insurance plan that way. But summoning Testudo Rat Newman is really cool in that regard, because, if your opponent is playing something like Kashtira, you're going to lock them out of a lot of different routes, or at least force them down a funky one where they use their battle phase just out this card, and then go from there. And if you can protect it on top of that, then they're in a lot of trouble. So very, very powerful card. Goldeneye's Idol. Interesting generic card. This one's, interesting, I would say. This card has a quick effect to let you look at your opponent's hand, which is funny, and that's pretty much it. You're just going to get full hand knowledge. So if you already have a bunch of interruptions, this could be a funny one. I don't know if this one has as much application because it doesn't actively do anything. It just does give you knowledge on your opponent's current hand. Knight's End Sorcerer. When this card's special summon, target up to 2 cards in your opponent's graveyard, banish them. Not bad. I mean, quick effect, banish 2 essentially is that card. So that's cool utility. He's also a tuner, so cool. 13 is pretty big for a 2. Moving on, Melfies. Now we're going to get to some of the more archetypal relevant ones. Melfies are super interesting because all of their monsters do stuff on the opponent's turn. Not to mention, this card sets them up to trigger immediately. If you summon Wally and you could go dog, a cat, or, I guess any of the others. Your opponent can choose to resolve their part of that effect, but if they do, then you get to immediately trigger whatever Melfi you summoned. So that's really, really interesting to me. I think this could be a really fun card for certain Melfi builds, because they just get to do so much on the opponent's turn, and this kind of sets you up for it really well. I think it's really cool. Next up is Nature Mole Cricket. Mole Cricket, geez. This is one of the best cards in the game right now, especially if you do it at a point where your opponent already has... if your opponent already has the highest attack monster on the field, like already puts a monster on the field essentially, you summon this card and this gets you Camellia plus the Sunflower, so you're going to have double negates with Sunflower, and you're going to get to send with Camellia, which is probably just going to be a tree and get a follow-up card. So you're going to have follow-up, you're going to have 2 monster negates, and you get to mill as well for the Sunflower, and you're going to have Mole Cricket Engrave as well to keep grinding anyway. So you actually get a ton of stuff off of just that. So that's really important to keep in mind. This one's actually pretty interesting. If something ever happens to like Runic, I could still see a world where like the Nature engine is still potentially good because of like these cards. Could be part of that. This card could be part of that. Diviner the Herald, really good card. This can send fairy engine stuff, but it can also send stuff like Untis from the extra deck. Pop a card, right? Immediately pop a card. Just makes this card Dryden. It's fine. It's also a tuner, so that can work as well. Omni Dragon Brotar. There's not a ton of great search targets, but I guess in Dark Dragon you could search a follow-up blowout card like Levianeer, or you can even search something like Phantasme. You know what I mean? If you're playing against a Link deck, you can then summon this card and search Phantasme to guarantee yourself. If you play against like Marinesis, you're going to guarantee yourself a draw 3. That's pretty good to dig for something to challenge their board. It's pretty nice. Tier Limit Merly, just summon it in mill 3. And then if you have a way to send it to grave, you could potentially actually get a fusion summon off. So that's cool. Not bad. Crystron Citri, this is a cool card. This actually has a quick effect during your opponent's main or battle phase to reborn any non-tuner from your grave and then immediately do a synchro summon. So for a machine synchro monster. So there are a couple of really good Crystron ones that actually can do stuff on the opponent's turn. So if you get that set up, this is actually a pretty cool card for sure. Infernoid Decatron. On summon, this card sends an Infernoid monster from deck to grave, then copies its name, level, and effects. And I think some of their boss monsters actually have pretty good interruption effects on the opponent's turn. So I think for Infernoid, this could actually be a pretty cool mid-range card for them, just to get access to a Decatron on the opponent's turn. You could even, it's not even once per turn or anything, so you could even Decatron on your turn to copy one of the boss monsters, and then summon a Decatron on the opponent's turn and copy the other one, and get extra names engraved, get extra multiple effects copied and interruptive effects, and go from there. It's pretty cool. Battle Wasp Sting the Poison. This card on summon will search you another card, and if you're just playing insects, you contribute any other insect to just get an impermanence. So it's an interruption plus a follow-up card. That's pretty nice. If Beat Troopers ever do come back around, this could be funny. This could be an interesting little interaction. Ninjas have a couple different targets. I think Green Ninja's funny. I think Mitsu for a monster negate, if you already have a set monster, is pretty cool. But Tobari's definitely the best one, because he is a quick effect to fusion summon into a ninja on the opponent's turn. And they have a ninja that just banishes a card when it's summoned. So just being able to quick banish a card, essentially, is pretty cool. This is an interesting one. I just think ninjas already have so many cards that summon monsters from deck that I don't necessarily think this card really does a ton that the deck doesn't already do for itself. So yeah. Cosmo Tin Can, as well as I think Strawman, or their level 1 and level 2s. They have the quick effects to get the boss monsters out of the hands. That could be this could actually be a really good consistency card for them to make sure they get a way to get the ships out of their hand, because that's the biggest problem with Cosmos at this point, is consistency. Drawing ships, but not drawing the little guys, drawing the little guys, but not drawing ships. So this does get you a little guy if you only have ships, or mostly ships in hand. It's pretty cool. S-Force Rapachiamaru. This card's cool. I mean, it banishes an S-Force monster from hand, and then summons a S-Force monster from deck. So being able to get out certain interruptions that way is pretty cool. Just plays on the opponent's turn. That simple. So summon it out. And I think the last one we have here is the Goatee guy. When this card is summoned, he immediately synchro summons into a fish synchro. They have a couple of fish synchros that I think on summon, like wipe a board or pop a card or whatever, which is pretty good. So that's pretty solid, being able to cheat him out and just get a quick synchro. I know that I can already potentially set that up, but this could be another interesting card to be able to, just plop this guy out and go into a play with that. But yeah, that's mostly it. I just think this card is so interesting. This card has so many like other potential interactions, but I felt like stuff was just not doing enough on the opponent's turn. It's just too slow. It has to be something that's like working immediately. That's why a lot of these were like interruptive cards. So yeah, it's a really, really interesting card. These are all the best options that I could find. Again, if you find anything else, I kind of had to skim because there was a lot of different monsters. I couldn't take that much time to go through every individual one, but the ones that popped out to me, I showed you here. Let me know if there's anything else that you think is particularly interesting to be able to summon off of this card. But as for today, guys, I am out of here. Thank you so much for watching. Like I said, let me know your thoughts down below on this card. What do you think it could potentially do in the future? And I'll see you in the next video. Peace.